Welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck Career Podcast. Um, I've met a lot of Sarahs lately. And so after last week's episode with Sarah, we've got another Sarah and somebody else I met on TikTok. Welcome, Sarah,
Thank you so much for having me.
but you're not in the East Coast
I'm
like
not.
Sarah
I
Connor from
was
last week.
a few months ago, but no longer.
Yeah. So um, let's talk about it because that's one of the things that caught my attention. I found you on TikTok and I I remember seeing some of your videos, but it started to catch my attention, especially when you were giving the countdown. How many more days until you were moving to Hawaii? So,
That's right.
how did that happen? What got you thinking, I got to get out of mainland US and go to Hawaii?
Yeah. So it's actually, there's a little bit of backstory, I think, required before we get to how I ended up
Okay.
here in Hawaii, which is, uh, it was not, I can say from the top here, it was not something I was planning on doing. It's an opportunity that came kind of unexpectedly in my life, and it came at a time where I was ready to just go for it.
Mm,
But before this even came into my world, I spent the bulk of my life so far doing all the things that I felt like I was supposed to do.
yeah.
I talk about this a lot, but I did well in school. I got the fancy degrees from the fancy universities. I ended up in the corporate consulting world because, that's what successful people are supposed to do is kind of go down a path like that. And I was good at that. I was good at doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. But I remember very distinctly walking into the office on the first day of my consulting job, and I was looking around at the cubicles, and I was like, this cannot be what all of life is. This cannot be what all of that led to, is me
Right.
sitting in this cubicle for the next 40 years, And so on that very first day in the office, that planted a seed where I was like, all right, I have to find another way. This this
Yeah.
is okay for right now. And I was lucky to be in a position where, I had great coworkers. I worked on interesting projects. It was aligned with my background and my degrees, but I just knew I felt pulled towards something different, something outside of a cubicle. So, there's a lot that happened between day one of work and me, uprooting my life to move to Hawaii. But I think that awareness on day one was a crucial part of the story for me because it meant that I was aware and looking for other opportunities in life all over the place, and I
Yeah.
started to see them when I started looking, And so the way I ended up here in Hawaii is in August this past year, this was after I've been working in the corporate consulting world for 3.5 years. But in August, I was visiting a friend in Australia, and I'm a fiend for finding a cheap flight, and I found a
Mm.
flight from Honolulu to Sydney, Australia for $150.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, that's a really good deal. So let me see if I can find myself, figure out my flight schedule. I was living in Detroit at the time. So I'm like, let
Okay.
me get from Detroit to Honolulu and then Honolulu to Sydney, and I can get that really cheap flight. And on top of that, I don't know why. I don't really have an explanation for this, but I had been drawn to Hawaii for a few years now.
Okay.
Like I had never been here before. August was the first time I had set foot on
August of this
the
year.
island. August, well, yeah, August
Uh,
2025. Yeah,
20
exactly.
last year. Okay.
Just a few months ago, I had never set foot here before, but for whatever reason, for the past couple years, I've been studying Hawaiian language just
Uh-huh.
like casually, because I found it very interesting, and I've been learning a lot about Hawaiian history and culture and stuff like that. Again, I had never been here before, but I just all the things aligned. I was like, well, I'm going to Australia. I found this cheap flight. I've been studying Hawaiian culture and language and stuff. Yeah, let me see if I can end up there, if I can find a
Hmm.
way to make that work. And so I had 2 days here. I'm on the big island of Hawaii right now, and I had 2 days here in August that I planned because I wanted to go to Volcano National Park, which is here on the big island. And it's the funniest story because I had such a short amount of time, so I planned the whole thing out, and I was like, this is exactly what I'm gonna do at what time and in what place, so I can maximize the opportunity here.
Right.
And step one on that itinerary I had planned for myself was I was going to land in Kona, and then I was going to take a bus over to Hilo because that's where my hostel was. And that bus never showed up.
Ah,
So, so, my in that moment, I was like, well, I guess we're going to rethink this whole itinerary I had planned for myself because step one didn't go as planned.
right.
Um, and there was a whole series of events that didn't go as planned from the beginning. But now I see it as none of that was wrong. That was all meant to happen just as it happened because
Right.
that's the only reason I ended up at the farm where I am now, where
Uh-huh.
I have totally changed my life because I wasn't even supposed to be on this part of the island in my original plan, but I ended up having to get a rental car and I had to change my flights around and had to change everything. And so because of that, that was the only reason I was even driving on this part of the island. And I saw a sign on the side of the road that said organic macadamia nuts. And I had just had this experience up at the volcano, and it was a very emotional thing. It was I felt very deeply connected to nature and was feeling this longing for this connection because my background's in ecology and
Uh-huh.
environmental science, and I was spending all my life working in a cubicle, and I was up at this most beautiful, like powerful place, and I was all these big feelings were kind of colliding, and I
Yeah.
saw this sign that was like organic macadamia nuts, and I pulled over and had a conversation with a farmer who was working a fruit stand here. And I stayed there for like 45 minutes because I was like, whoa, this guy has life figured out. He
Yeah.
is living an amazing life. And I got well into his life story, and he kind of left behind the corporate world to come start this farm where we are
Mhm.
now. And so I started to pick his brain, and I was like, how did you do this? How does somebody do this with their life? Because what you're doing is it resonates so much with me.
Yeah.
Um, and then that night I was at my hostel and I sent a big long email to him, to the farmer I had met, and was like, all right, I know I'm a stranger, but this is who I am. This is my background. These are the skills that I have, and this is what I think I might be able to bring to the farm. And what do you think?
Yeah.
And then I went to Australia and we were emailing while I was in Australia. And the day I landed back in Michigan, we got on a Zoom call. And then they said, yeah, come over, let's do it. And that's how I ended up here. So from that Zoom call, it was like a month or so. I sold my car, I changed
Uh-huh.
my whole life, and I moved here to the farm. So I've been here since November. It's February now, so I actually have a countdown on my phone, and I think that I just hit 100 days that I've been here. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's the story.
That's incredible. So I'm curious a couple things because you're doing a series right now on
Mhm.
lessons that you had to unlearn. Did you get any resistance from anybody saying, Sarah, don't do that. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. That's crazy. Stay. You've got a good job. You've got a good education. Keep doing something safe or
Yeah.
uh, anything at all like that.
I think the most interesting thing about that is that all of that chatter was coming from me. And when
Ah,
I started, because yeah, that was my thought. I was like, you spent your whole life working towards this consulting job that you
uh-huh.
have, and you're set, you got a good retirement plan, you got great health insurance, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do. And so I was super afraid of
Mhm.
leaving behind all of that. But I thought what was super interesting, and I know this is not everyone's experience, and I'm really grateful to have this, but when I was talking to people about it in real life, most people really admired what I was doing, and they were actually like, I don't want to say jealousy, but people were like, whoa, yeah, do that. That's amazing. That's what a
Yeah.
cool opportunity. Like it would be an opportunity that's too good to pass up, And so like I expected that I was going to get a lot of that pushback from people, I expected to hear that, but it really all came from me at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
So how long did it take for you to stop listening to yourself and actually
Mm,
do something that that aligned really with what you wanted that
yeah,
you were you were trying to talk yourself out of?
yeah. I think so. This is a funny answer to this question, but it all comes together, I promise. One of my like hobbies to do when I go home to my parents' house is I digitize all of our home videos
Uh-huh.
from my childhood. And I recently came across one of I gave a speech at my high school graduation, and I found my high school graduation speech, and I was listening to what I said back then, and it made me cry because I that girl, that, 17-year-old was talking about finding your passion and following it. And, we're going to hear the chatter from society about becoming a doctor or becoming a lawyer because that's what successful people do. But you need to like hone in on what you care about, what lights you up inside and hold on to that and run. And I was 17 when I said that, and I was 28 when I decided to leave the corporate world to go work on a farm. So I think really it's like over a decade of fighting this because
Yeah.
I I had this knowledge in me. I knew that following my passions was what I wanted to do and was the right thing to do, but there was like a whole nother 10 years after that of me going to college and me going to grad school and me getting into this consulting world because I thought that that's what I was supposed to do. So, for me, it definitely wasn't something that happened overnight. But I think it came from, planting that seed really early on, and then starting to be aware of and look for opportunities kind of outside of that well, you know, that well-walked path in front of
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
So if you hadn't been digitizing videos, do you think you would be where you are now? If you hadn't re-seen that video from 11 years ago?
Yes, I do think I would be because I think that all of the things that I care about, all of my passions, my motivations have always been there. And I think that that's true for most of us. Like, eh, I love digitizing these videos because it's a reminder that
Hmm.
these things have always been there. Even the videos of me as like a 5-year-old or a
Right.
6-year-old, I'm like, oh, that girl, she is me. And I loved making videos since I was able to hold a camera, and so it's a really good reminder for me to see that. But I don't think I would say that I wouldn't have totally changed my life if I didn't see that because I think that all of that has been in me
Mm.
the whole time. So it's a helpful wake up call for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, and it feels so good to like actually listen to the things that light you up inside. Once you start doing that, my experience has been things just start lining up in your life. When you stop resisting, you stop pushing against the things that you're most called to do and that feel most natural to you. Things just start to work when you
Yeah.
do that, and it's an amazing feeling. So,
So what have been some of the biggest surprises that you've had as since that
yeah.
August realization that oh, this is exactly where I'm meant to be, what I'm meant to be doing?
Mm. Yeah, I think I would say the biggest surprise is how easy and how natural it's all felt. Because before I took this leap and before I trusted myself enough to do this, I was so consumed by all of my fears and all of the long list I had come up with of the thousand reasons why this could go wrong
Right.
and why I needed to stay in my consulting desk job. And then I did it and I took the plunge and it was scary and
Mhm.
all those fears they didn't go anywhere, but none of them have happened,
Right.
and that I would say that was surprising to know that that was all in my head, and that
Mhm.
was all what was keeping me stuck where I was.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, it's I think I get so much encouragement by looking at other people who have done stuff like this before me to be like, okay, the world kept turning when
Right.
they changed their life. It's not like catastrophe happened and everything went terribly. Usually it actually is the other way around, right? And so yeah, that I guess yeah, that was the surprise for me is that it it's been fine. Like none of my fears have actually materialized in the real world. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's fascinating. What was the tipping point, do you think, that you decided to discount all of the fears, all of the legitimate concerns that what could go wrong really could go wrong, and you decided, nope, I got this.
Yeah. I mean, I remember back in August, when I had this opportunity come into my life, like I was literally visualizing a fork in the road.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I could take the path I've been walking down, which is stable, it's secure, it's fine. I would have a good life if
Yeah.
I walked down this road. Or I could walk down this path, which is there are a lot more unknowns. Things could go wrong. The next steps aren't all laid out for me the way that they are on this other path. But that road is really a lot more exciting to me. And at the end of the day, there's a someone I follow on TikTok who she has another podcast that's called For the Plot podcast. And she interviews people who do things in life for the plot, to
Mhm.
say at the end of the day, what's the more interesting story to tell about your own life? And I was thinking about that and I was like, sometimes we just have to do things for the plot,
Yeah.
do things to make the story of your own life more interesting. And when I thought about the story of my life down the path I was going down, I was like, that's a pretty boring story. Like
Right.
she did well in school. She got a good job. She worked that job for 40 years and then she retired, you know?
That's not everybody, but that's the same story as everybody else.
Right. That story's been told a lot of
Yeah.
times.
And will continue to be told a
Yeah.
lot of times.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
Yep.
amazing. So what are some of the biggest surprises that you had as you quit your job, you
Mhm.
sold your life, basically,
Yeah.
car, everything, moved a few
Yeah.
time zones away.
Yeah. You know, something that shocked me throughout this whole process, I was so afraid to tell the people at work about this situation. I didn't want to burn bridges, and I was honestly I was afraid of judgment from
Mhm.
people, like everybody else. I often and again I want to say the people I work with are great people. They're really kind, really good people. And I used to work on or used to volunteer on our recruiting committee at our firm. And I used to joke that we kind of hire the same person over and over again. Like we are all really similar type A, people pleasing, overachiever type of people. And so I was so afraid that when I told them what I was doing, that they would judge me, that they would not understand, that there would just be some negative pushback.
Yeah.
And instead, I had multiple supervisors tell me that they were so proud of me for doing this and that I was so brave. One of my supervisors, she like teared up on the call when I told her what I was doing because she was just like, "Wow, I wish that I could be as brave as you to do something like this
Yeah.
in life." And that was so unexpected for me. I was so scared on that call. And what a beautiful thing for her to say that to me. And I sat with that after a while because I was like, brave. I feel so scared. Like, how could you be calling me brave right now?
Yeah.
I'm still stuck in this place of like, what if everything goes wrong?
What if my life
Um,
blows up?
yeah, exactly. Like I feel afraid. I don't feel brave. But one of my other coworkers like totally changed my perspective about this because they said to me, I don't think that bravery is the absence of fear. I think it's doing things alongside fear. It's
Yeah.
being afraid and doing things anyway. So yeah, that was really surprising to me is how well my bosses received this information from me.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we don't take action because we're waiting for the fear to disappear.
Yeah,
We're waiting for the answers to show up. We're waiting for the path to become clear. And it doesn't until you
right.
start walking the path. And then you realize, oh, yeah, I got this figured out. I can figure this out. This is going to work. And I think where a lot of times we expect judgment from others, we get respect because we're doing something that they would love to be doing and they
Yeah,
don't have the courage to do it.
right.
And I don't know
Right.
that that's the reason to do something, but I'm with you that the judgment that I expected was it only came from the thoughts that I had, not
Hmm.
from other people.
Yeah. And what a beautiful thing. Exactly. I think you're exactly right that a lot of people have these dreams about living a life that's different from the life that they're living right now. And we stay stuck in, like I said, that list of 1,000 reasons why it won't work. And so to see other people, going off this path, doing something a little bit different, I think you might get two responses. Like, yeah, you might get some pushback from people, but usually that's coming from the same place of they just wish that they could do that same thing too, you know. I
Yeah,
just posted a video about this the other day where, it's like um people just want to feel better about having gone through things that resulted in them not being happy and not being fulfilled. And so sometimes when you do get that pushback from people and people say, "No, that's a silly decision. You're throwing everything away." They're not saying that because they really think that about you. It's because
right.
of their own fears and in their own lives. So,
They're talking to
yeah.
themselves. They're not talking to you when they say
Right.
that. There, I had
Right.
a conversation with my wife one time where she said, "Stop yelling at me." And I said, "I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at me. You're just standing in the way." And
Right.
so we do the same thing with other people. You shouldn't. And what they're really saying is, I couldn't, or I won't, or I, I can't.
Right.
And so I love that. How did you come up with the series that you've been doing on lessons that you had to unlearn?
Hmm.
And are you going to expand it beyond, what is it, 28 lessons?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I wish I could say, "Oh, I've been planning this out for a long time. This is, no, what happened was I think it was February 1st and I was like sitting with this okay, I'm in this position where I really want to use content as a way to grow my audience. I know that people use content as a way to generate revenue to you can build an audience and you can monetize that in different ways and build community most importantly. Like the internet is such a beautiful, amazing way to be able to do that. And that's one of my big goals in this new chapter of my life is to take this new availability I have, this new kind of
Mhm.
schedule that I have to be able to actually really lean into that. And I've been dipping my toes in, but I had a moment the other day where I was like, all right, you're going to do this. You're going to commit and you're going to really show up the way that you need to show up. And it's funny because this is the second year in the row where I woke up on February 1st, the shortest month of the year, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do a daily thing, a daily series, and I can't overthink it. I can't be a perfectionist about it because I have to put out a video every single day. So last year it was on my first YouTube channel that I had, and I did a daily vlog every day for February. This year it was February 1st, and I am a little more strategic about it now. And I know exactly who I want to be talking to on the
Mhm.
internet. I know my ideal client avatar, whatever we want to call it.
Right.
I know who they are. And so I'm like, how can I reach them? How can I talk to them? And basically they're me six
Yeah.
months ago, me when I was stuck at my desk job. And so I was this is a very Hawaii thing. I was sitting on the beach and I
Uh-huh.
had a notebook and I said, all right, let me take 28 days and I can share 28 lessons that I learned before leaving the corporate world to come work on the farm. because I want to resonate with people who are in the same situation where they're daydreaming about a different life, but they're not quite there yet, not
Yeah.
ready to like take the leap. So I sat there with my notebook and I just brainstormed like 30 something lessons, and now I've just been recording one every single day. So your question about will it go beyond these 28 days? For sure. I think this particular series I'll close it at out at day 28, but the lessons are there's so many more than
Yeah.
28. Like, and as I keep making these videos, I keep thinking of other ideas, and people leave comments that make me think about other things too. And so this is like a topic I could talk about endlessly.
Yeah.
So even outside of the context of this series, oh yeah, we're gonna keep talking about this.
I love it. So what are some of the biggest lessons that you had to unlearn, and how did you unlearn them?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, good question. I mean, so for any of these lessons, I think the way to unlearn them is through action. We were talking earlier about, people waiting for the next step to be revealed to
Yeah.
them. And I'm a big believer in when people say like clarity comes from action,
Uh-huh.
that has been my experience as well. Like you can't just think about these things. You can't just plan them and hope that maybe one day they'll happen. You just have to do things. You have to test things. You have to have an experimenter's mindset, and you have to be ready to fail. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the big lessons. I don't think I've made a video about this one yet, but embracing failure is super, super important in order to be able to escape the confines of the life that you feel like you're supposed to live. For me, I can talk specifically about the content side. I think that's something that holds people back from this world a long time is the fear of judgment, the fear of
Mm.
failure, or they can dip their toes into it and they'll post a video that gets 20 views and they're like, oh no, this is this is it.
Not for
This is so
me.
embarrassing. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. But to anyone in that position, I think some of the advice that I got that totally changed my perspective on that is like, that's actually such an amazing place to be when nobody is watching the content you're putting out, whether that's social media or if you're blogging or if you're whatever you're putting out into the world, take advantage of being in that place when nobody is watching because that's an amazing training grounds for you.
Yes.
You don't have the pressure. If what if you were posting your second video you've ever posted on the internet and you had 500,000 people watching that second video? Like that's so scary. That's
Right.
so much pressure. But if you have your mom and your cousin watching it, like just play, just test, just experiment, just see what works, see what feels good, and there's so much less pressure. So it's actually not a bad thing at all to be a beginner.
Right.
It's a great thing, and we should all embrace that stage of any journey. Um, yeah, and that comes with failure too.
Right.
So, I love when people talk about failing fast, and
Mm.
they'll say, okay, if you were told that whatever goal you're working towards, you had to fail publicly 20 times, and then on the 21st time, that goal is going to be achieved.
Right.
If you knew that to be true, you would be so eager to fail, to be like, all right, next failure, let's go, let's go. And
Right.
people get so afraid of failing one time, and then they'll stop and they'll say, well, this isn't for me. Um, but we have to fail in order to find any kind of success. So,
Well,
yeah,
because
anyway, I don't even remember what your original question
well,
was, but here we
no,
are.
the so but there were so many great nuggets that you put in there. Number one, um, that thought that you shared about nobody's watching is exactly how I got my first video recorded. Nobody's going to
Mm,
see this. And
yeah.
so who cares? Who cares how bad and it is bad. So you can go back and watch it because I've not taken it down and it is awful and don't look at it but who cares? And I think that my videos are better today than they were 2 years ago. But that's one thing. The other thing is we have redefined failure in our minds. And this is one of the things that happens over time when you were 5 years old or four or six and learning how to ride a two-wheeler without training wheels, and you wobbled and you tipped over, that was just part of the process. And today, for some reason, we have changed the definition and made, quote, failure mean we're bad. Not just that we're bad at something, but we're bad. And that is so untrue. And um, on my videos, a lot of times I talk about fear of failure, and I don't believe that we're afraid of failure. I believe we're afraid of not being good at something.
Mm,
And the only way to get good at something is to be willing to be bad at something. And sometimes you can do that privately, and sometimes you do it publicly. But the very first day that you walked into your consulting job, you were not a master consultant. And you had to make mistakes, and you had to learn nuance and tactics and techniques and the right questions. And that's the only way.
right. Right. I totally agree. And are you familiar with Ira Glass's The Gap?
Yes.
I love that. Anyone who hasn't heard that or read that, I would totally recommend looking into it because it's a beautiful work of art and I can't replicate it the way that Ira Glass does. But the idea is that there is a gap for everybody between where they are now and where they want to be. And that can be applied anywhere in life. When I first came across this, it was when I was doing a lot of creative work. I was doing a lot of painting, and it was like you have this creative vision for what you want to be able to do, and what you're able to do right now is not that. It's not where you want to be, and that's the gap.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will take a couple steps into the gap and be like, I'm really bad at this thing that I want to do. And they'll turn around or they'll
Mhm.
just stop right there and they'll never make it across the gap. But the whole message there that Ira Glass shares is like everybody experiences the gap. Everyone knows that distance between where they are now and where they want to be. And it's just up to you if you're going to keep taking one step after another to close that gap. And so I think about that anytime I look at somebody ahead of me, someone who I consider successful in life, or even like in the creative world, you can look at Picasso, look at Van
Mhm.
Gogh, or whoever. Everybody had to cross that gap. Everybody was a beginner at some
Yeah.
point, and they were all bad at whatever they're doing now at some point. They just kept going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. We could talk forever. This
Yeah.
would be, this has been such a blast. Um, if people want to learn the lessons that you had to unlearn or follow you on your channels or get to know you or whatever, I don't know. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah. So I you can find me anywhere at Sarah Feels Good. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. You can always shoot me an email at contact.sarah.feelsgood. Sorry, contact.sarah.feels.good at gmail.com. That's all in my social media. So Sarah Feels Good. I'm very active, working on growing all of those channels right now. So would love to have you there and continue to grow this community.
Yeah, go follow Sarah. And I'll put all that information in the show notes as well to make it as easy as possible. But this has been such a blast to learn. Like I said, and I've said this many times on the podcast before, that if I can shave time, any time off from the journey that I took to the journey that you're on, that's uh, a good day for me. So thanks so much for meeting some guy on TikTok and having a conversation. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much. My very first podcast. Woo!
Yay. So, and you weren't bad at it. This was such a great conversation. So many um, nuggets. I used that word before. I don't know if it's the right word, but so many just nuggets of gold that you dropped that
Oh, thank you.
so fun. Um, yeah, I'm going to stay connected. I want to continue to learn the lessons
Sure.
and see if I've unlearned the things that I need to unlearn to be to cross the gap. So
Exactly. And same with you. I love seeing your videos too. Get so much insight from your experience. And it seems like you have the opportunity to talk to all kinds of really interesting people. So I love that.
it's been a blast. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for everybody else for listening. We will be back next week.